Welcome to the Comic Sauce Podcast, where we talk comics and comics culture. I am your host, Porfirio Rangel, and today is Thursday, July 3rd, 2025, and I am joined by Henry Liu. Hey, Henry, so quick question. Who's your favorite Spider-Man?
Who is my favorite Spider-Man? Oh my God, this is the easiest question ever. Miles Morales, of course.
Okay, sorry, let me rephrase that. Favorite Spider-Man actor.
Well, I guess that'd be easy also because that'd be Shamik Moore,
Okay.
aka Miles Morales.
Okay. And I'm also joined by Christian Diadamo. Hey, Christian, same question. Who's your favorite Spider-Man actor?
Hey, hey. Let's see. I feel like each of the three kind of big ones, Toby, Andrew, and Tom, all kind of bring something different to the table. But I think out of all of those, I like Tom. I think he's like a very well-rounded Peter Parker.
Okay.
You-
So, why do I ask this question? Well, first off, it is the 13th anniversary of my favorite Spider-Man actor, the Amazing Spider-Man. So, let me just give a shout out to that. That's the 13th anniversary to this day, July 3rd.
Ooh.
But the second reason why I asked this question is because it's such a controversial take. We all have different opinions, which is what this episode's going to be about, different opinions on controversial topics, the philosophical questions that we ask during when we watch movies. And what do I mean by that? I'm going to be asking questions like who is right, who is wrong, do you agree? Is this what we should do? And so we're going to be talking about different questions from different movies, some of our favorite Marvel, DC, Star Wars films. So that's what today's episode's going to be about. So the
Ooh.
first the first movie I bring up is Avengers Infinity War. And the question I have is, was Thanos right? And if you have not seen Infinity War, really fast, spoilers, because we're going to talk a lot of spoilers for all these films that we're going to talk about. So spoiler alert.
Mm-hmm.
But some context to this film is that Thanos wanted to collect the six Infinity Stones and erase half of the universe because he wanted to restore balance and prevent the extinction of all life and just increase the amount of resources for everybody to have a happy life. And so, some agree, some disagree. So that is my question. Was Thanos right? Let me start with you, Christian.
So I'm gonna go. No, Thanos was not right. And I think the most obvious answer to that is like, well, at the very beginning of Endgame, go to Earth, and Earth sucks. All the buildings were just destroyed. Everyone was like at these like trauma centers, like managing their grief that like this random person in their life could be their loved one or someone they knew just vanished and disappeared. And so I would say he's wrong on that, and just that it makes life better. I also think that um, structures of government are kind of built around population and population size. Of course, they change, but I think um, you have societies are built out of how many people, and if you just radically change how many people are in a society, um, you don't even. I don't think you even have to radically change it. I think if you just make gradual changes too much in one direction, then a lot of problems are going to spring up in terms of feeding this population, housing the population, and which of course lead to the ultimate survival of the population. And so I think no, I think just this idea of just wiping half the people out with the snap of your fingers was very much not the way about it, and that's why he is the Mad Titan.
That's why he's the villain. What about you, Henry? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Christian. Thanos was not right. And yeah, well said, Christian. I don't think I have a whole lot to add. I really like your example of Endgame, where you see the aftermath of the snap, right? The Earth isn't like a utopia, right? Things are kind of messed up. People are really bummed out, right? And it does remind me of another superhero property that went through this, The Watchmen. The question of is Thanos right is really the same question of is Ozymandias right, right? And the same thing, like you see the aftermath in the Watchmen TV show, right? And again, things are not ideal. Things are still messed up, right? So you killed like countless amounts of people for what? For really nothing. So, and that's just the fictional side of it. Like in the real world side of it, has genocide really led to anything good? I don't think so. So I think it's a hard no for me.
So it didn't solve the answer of like hunger and poverty. Henry
No,
says no.
no, 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 no.
You
Just
Yeah.
know,
say no.
Christian, what?
I'd say add on to that. Like one thing we've talked about, like I think both Henry and I have just kind of mentioned, is that it always feels like there's kind of this subjective, um, kind of feeling that's loss, that's added into this equation that like the villain doesn't factor in, like, oh, I want to make the world better by destroying, millions. I want to kill millions to save billions. And
Hmm.
so like I would say that doesn't make it better because it just makes it creates so much sadness, it creates so much grief.
Hmm.
It There's something that's lost that cannot be gained back,
Mm,
Yeah.
you know, and that's not really something like quantifiable, even
hmm.
though like the way they talk about it on paper, it's like, oh well, like the way Thanos talks about his planet, like, oh, if we just killed half of everybody, we theoretically would have had all these resources left on Titan to like save the population. But it's the kind of thing that only kind of works. I feel like that's something that only works in their mind and like on paper, so to speak. But when something like that like happens, there's kind of a greater like shockwave
Mm,
of other bad things happening that come out of that
hmm.
decision.
My thought is, yeah, Thanos, no, I don't agree with his what he did. I could kind of understand what he was going for, but just the way he executed, very bad. No, I am not promoting or supporting genocide in any way, but I do kind of understand that what he means about like trying to solve like, hunger and have like resources to people, but just this way was not the best way to execute it. But also like there are just sometimes I do wonder like, oh God, like there are some people that do need to disappear, and Thanos was right in having them disappear. But
Uh-huh.
but that's just my thought.
Yeah. Maybe a later question in this episode. Yeah, perhaps, perhaps.
We'll see, we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Uh-huh. So let's move on. Um, our next question that I want to bring up is comes from Captain America Civil War, and it's the Sokovia Accords debate. So, what are the Sokovia Accords? They're like a list of rules that the UN created, and they want control and regulation of enhanced individuals. They want them to register and operate under UN rule, meaning that like after, you know, superheroes would go under and go to a specific event if the UN approved of it. And this all came about after the Avengers did numerous like mass damage to cities like New York City and what was it? Yugoslavia?
Sokovia.
Sokovia.
Sokovia. Yep.
Sokovia. So and so the Avengers, they, split up. They're divided on who's right or wrong. Um, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Henry, who are you for or against the Sokovia Accords?
This is a good question. Um, so in the last question, I brought up like fictionally versus nonfiction, right? So I kind of have a similar answer here. Fictionally, I am Team Cap all the way. I've stated this before. Um, yeah, in this world where the Avengers exist, of course I support uh, superhero individuals like the Avengers having free reign because they are literally the best of us. They are Earth's mightiest heroes, and these are the best people in the universe, right? Of course, when I say that, I'm talking fictionally, right? The Avengers actually don't exist in real life, sadly enough. In real life, there are no superheroes, and there certainly aren't people like the Avengers. So in real life, I think there does have to be these checks and balances. And yes, in real life, I would support the Sokovia Accords. I would support Team Iron Man in this case. Um, yeah, I mean, you see what has happened with police corruption and certain people having too much power, certain people being too dangerous, and they're just it's unfortunate, but like I said, there are no real life Avengers, right? Humans are flawed, and humans need to be kept in check.
I have a follow-up question to that because you just say like, if the Avengers were real, you would be against the Sokovia Accords because they fight for good.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's be honest. Like, I feel like the Avengers would, real life be the boys.
Hmm. Yeah, I was just thinking that.
It's hard to say like what if they really exist, but if the members of Team Captain America from this movie were real, I would follow them to into battle. They're my people.
You have a lot of blind faith, Henry. Now,
That's just,
I'll
I mean, come
respect.
on, you got Steve, you got Bucky, come on.
Bucky
Falcon,
Bucky
let's
was a
go.
killer. Bucky was an assassin.
Bucky, I support Bucky.
Okay, Christian, what about you?
This is a hard question, like one that I'm not always sure which team I'm truly on, because I think they both make good arguments. I think especially when you in the context of the world and the movie that they're in, like Cap saying, we're not always sure that they're going to send us after the right villains, and that the safest hands are our own.
Hmm.
Like we're really the only people we trust with our powers. And I think, if you remember, Winter Soldier, Captain America learned that, oh yeah, you can't always trust the government, and you just because they're doing all these shadowy things.
Hmm.
And then on Iron Man's side, he said, we have too much power, and that we're causing all this collateral damage, and that we need to be kept in check.
Hmm.
Whereas, yeah, if you remember, like Iron Man 2 and 3, like he does cause like all this collateral damage. He hurts the ones that he cares about. Like in Iron
Hmm.
Man 3, he just kind of gives the Mandarin just the coordinates to his home, and the Mandarin, comes over and blows it up and almost kills Pepper Potts.
Hmm.
Um and he kind of did this out of just like out of his own ego. Iron Man, that's what, like, Tony just said, isn't these are the coordinates of my house, I'm waiting for you. And so he's thinking like, oh God, like we need to be kept in check before somebody really gets hurt, especially he has the visions of Thanos, and he wants to build this essentially like just dome around the entire planet
Yeah.
because he's worried about this just escalating threat. So, let's see. I think if I was gonna pick one, like I think if you think about these specific characters in the Marvel universe, there is a part of me that does think Team Cap, but I don't know, man. I feel like because you think of I think also with the boys argument.
Hmm.
Well, like once you say the word the boys, you're like, oh yeah, definitely Team Iron Man. Keep them in check forever.
Uh-huh.
Like, part of me kind of wants to lean Teen Iron Man.
Hmm. For me, I feel like I've gone back and forth with this question over the years. When the movie first came out, I was definitely Team Cap, but I think I was just picking it because of the characters that were in Team Cap. Scarlet Witch, Ant-Man, Captain America. But I feel like as I gotten older, I feel like I am definitely more Team Iron Man. I'm sorry, Henry. Yeah, I don't trust the Avengers in thinking that they will be protecting us all the time. And there definitely just has to be like, yeah, some kind of checks and balances with power and responsibility for their actions. Um, yeah, I don't think that they would always have our best intention at mind, but that's just my take.
Well, Porfirio, people like you would have led to the end of the universe because Thanos would have snapped us all away without the
Right?
Avengers, okay?
I guess so. I guess so.
Who
I
knows?
guess
Maybe
so.
we would have had that Iron Dome around the world.
So let's move on to our next fun question. And so this was a question that Christian brought up, and it's the question, is Batman right to keep a plan about the Justice League's weaknesses? So, Christian, do you want to give a little bit of background to what that means and your answer?
Sure. So this comes from the uh, famous Justice League graphic novel, The Tower of Babel, where the League of Shadows sneaks into the Batcave, hacks the Bat computer, and sees that Batman has contingency plans how to take out each member of the Justice League, and uses those plans to take out the Justice League. And of course, at the end, after the heroes save the day, this was also, I guess, adapted into the animated movie Justice League Doom. So, and at the end of the movie, they kick Batman out of the Justice League, and say that he was wrong for keeping those plans. But the big question is Batman in the right for such, you know, overpowered people, such
Hmm.
like like superheroes on who can do feats far beyond any person? Is Batman, this character that has no superpowers, right for knowing their weakness and keeping that secret from them?
Hmm.
And this is also in a way similar to the Sokovia Accords debate, but in a different way, on a different level. This will be the personal one versus the governing body.
Hmm.
So I would say Batman is in the right to keep those contingency plans. Of course, you have the mind control aspect of it, and two is what happens if they actually do go bad? How are they going to deal with them? Um, because they're so power, the Justice League is so powerful because they can just kind of level, almost like Superman can level a city on his own. I think someone should have that, and I think if you think of the character of Batman, he seems like the character who probably should have that,
Hmm.
who should have that plan, even if it does betray the trust of the friend. I think that's part of what keeps the world safe
Hmm.
in a way.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Batman is in the right to do it, like kind of to my reasoning for the Sokovia Accords question, like does Justice League, like if they ever get out of hand, like who's to stop them? And here comes Batman saving us all, and stopping Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, like, and so it may, yeah, come at distrust from the other members, but I do think Batman was in the right to have those plans. Henry?
Okay, yeah, this is similar to the Sokovia Accords question. And I was thinking I'd be pretty hypocritical if I were to say in a fictional world I would support Batman here, because if I'm saying I trust the Avengers in the Marvel universe, I should also say I trust the Justice League in the
Yes.
DC universe, right? So, fictionally, my answer is the same. No, I don't think Batman should have this contingency plan thing, because it's the Justice League. These are the best of us. We should trust them, right? Now the bigger question, the arguably the more important question is, in real life, should something like this be supported? Now, my answer here is different because it is one person here, right? So I do support like a governing body keeping um powerful individuals in check, right? Something like the Sokovia Accords in real life, I would support. Now here it's one person, one individual. I mean, it is Batman. It is Bruce Wayne, who is a genius and an amazing hero, but it's still one person, right? Um, so I would have to say no. Like, um, it would have to be a group. Like there needs to be some sort of democratic decision, like some sort of steering committee or something. But it's hard for me to wrap my head around just one person making this call. Like, okay, oh shoot, Superman's going off, flying off the handle. Let's bust out the kryptonite. One person making that decision. Uh, you know, Again, this is in the real world, so I shouldn't be using names like Batman and Superman, but the idea of one person calling the shots, then we're getting into like emperor territory, right? So that's problematic.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like Bruce Wayne is smart enough to know when to be able to be like, I could help my friend versus like they need to be taken down. Like Superman is like Luthen from Andor. He knows how to make the hard choices. And he
Yeah,
may be seemed as the villain, but he knows how to make the hard choices for the greater good.
yeah.
Yeah,
It,
actually, here's an interesting question. What if Batman shared them? Like, what if he was just like, "All right, everybody, I've collected all of these things. You guys all need to know this. This is how to take down
mhm.
each one of you."
See, I kind of like that, where there's like a group and they come to like a consensus decision kind of thing. Like that makes more sense to me. Again, in a real
Yeah,
world sort of situation.
like who knows? Because that could be like on paper, you could see that being like, okay, well, it's probably good if each one of them knows how to take the other down. But you also kind of think, well, maybe that is a little too much information that people should have on the different superheroes.
Hmm.
On a separate note, it might be good for them to have, it might be good for each individual to have that information anyway, right? You know each other's weaknesses, so you can help out accordingly, right? In a battle, these are things you should know about your teammates, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right? Yeah,
Okay. Okay, this one was a little disagreeable, you know.
slightly.
This is slightly. This is why we're having this episode to hear everybody's opinion.
Yeah.
But let's move on. And so the next film in our episode is Blade Runner. So the question I am posing to both of you is what makes a human? And so Blade Runner is has they're androids, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
they're androids.
replicants is what they call them, but basically the
Replicants.
same
Rep
Yeah.
thing.
replicants. And so they are kind of considered like disposable. So the film has this theme of like what makes a human. Is it like the capacity of having emotions, creating memories, having a soul? And it, I mean, it's so I know it like it applied to like yeah, you guys said the replicants, but I feel like it also kind of applies to even us humans. Like, you know, I feel like it kind of creates like a moral line of what is a good person versus like what's a bad person, you know? Um, so who wants to start off on this discussion?
Hmm. It's definitely a big question. I'll start off. So I think what makes us human and like what is the soul? So because in Blade Runner in the movie, they always say like at the beginning you see the guy taking the tests to see if he experiences emotion. I forget the name of the test, but they do it a few times in the movie, and they ask him they ask the replicant questions that essentially make him emotionally quote unquote divide by zero. Like he goes crazy and he tries to kill the person trying to ask the questions, and that's how they find out who is a replicant. And so in like they say, the LAPD says in the movie that that it is the capacity to feel emotion.
Hmm.
That emotions are kind of what make us human. And so, in a way, I do think I agree. I think the way, of course, the LAPD goes about it is very robotic in nature and very unhuman-like in the movie. But in a way, I feel like it's a mix of kind of like the idea of like abstract thought and emotions. I think empathy comes from that a lot.
Hmm.
And that's something that they talk about in the movie a lot is this idea of like what is empathy. And I think it's empathizing, of course, with the humans, empathizing with the animals, empathizing, of course, with the replicants in the movie.
Hmm.
And I think that I guess, a scene from the sequel, Blade Runner 2049. I was thinking about this lately for some reason because I just saw like a picture of the scene. It's the most famous scene of Blade Runner 2049 where sees the big hologram of the Joy units, and it's like the "You look like a good Joe" scene towards the very end of the movie, and I think and I think what I kind of dissect from that scene is that Kay realizes that it's also the relationships that are what make us human.
Hmm.
His relationship with Joy was real, and he wants Deckard to be with his daughter because that is what makes us human, and it's almost like that's the basis for the emotion is the relationships we form as well. So that's my very jumbled answer.
Henry, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Yeah, this is a deep one, no question. Thought-provoking question, no doubt. Um, yeah, I mean, the simple answer is what makes us human is our soul, right?
Mm,
To have a soul. Of course, then that begs the question, what does it mean to have a soul, right? I think what Christian mentioned makes a lot of sense. The emotional component, right? That makes us human. But I think it's more than that too, because, you know, I have a cat and I have a dog. I see them every day and they're not human, but they definitely have emotions, no
hmm.
question, right? So there's something a little more to that, right? There's another piece to it. Um, yeah, this past year or so, I've watched a lot of Ghost in the Shell anime,
Mm,
and that series or that franchise touches upon this question a lot also, right? And in Ghost in the Shell, it breaks it down like this. Like Right, it's right in the title, Ghost in the Shell. What is a ghost? What is a shell? Right, the ghost is essentially what we've been talking about, the soul, right? The shell is just like our physical body. And in the world of Blade Runner, in the world of Ghost in the Shell, it's interchangeable. You can do body mods, you can have a different body altogether. Um, that's not key to who you really are. There's even this idea of the cyber brain in Ghost in the Shell, and that is sort of interchangeable too. Like you can get a new brain, you can, download all these skills, you can wipe your memory, but your ghost never goes away unless you die, right? Your ghost is who you are at your core, right? That is your soul. So yes, it's emotions, but like I said, it's more than that, right? I think there's a consciousness
Mm.
aspect to it, a self-awareness. So I think diving deeper, these are really the things that make us human. And by that rationale, like um, you look at clones, replicants, androids, like they do have these things, right? So not only are we answering the question like what makes us human, but like what is a human, right? And it's not just someone who's like biologically born a human, right? I think individuals with these aspects can be considered that also, right? So, I mean, it opens up a whole can of worms, but the sub question here that we discussed previously was, do clones deserve rights? And by what I just mentioned, I would say yes, because clones do have this consciousness, this self-awareness, right? So anyhow, that's my rambled thoughts on that.
Mhm.
We're getting deep into the
Yes.
questions, aren't we?
Yes.
So, I'm so happy, Henry, that you brought up Ghost in the Shell, because it kind of leads me into a movie that was kind of influenced by Ghost in the Shell, and that is the movie The Matrix.
Yeah,
I think it's one of our favorite movies between the three of us. It's super dope.
for sure.
So the question I have, it's pretty simple. If you've seen the movie, you probably know what question I'm going to ask, and it is, would you take the red pill or the blue pill? So the blue pill is that you'll stay in the Matrix because you're comfortable with that life, even though it is false. It's all a reality um thing. But if you take the red pill, you wake up from the Matrix. However, the world has gone to shit. So you have to survive in that world. So that's the question. Do you take the red or blue pill? Henry?
All right, the big question, red or blue. So, you know, in the moment, of course, the temptation is to take the blue pill, right? You live the easy life. You live life with the wool pulled over your eyes, right? You are sheltered from the harsh realities of the world. Um, but that said, I think the right answer is take the red pill. Um, because if you take the blue pill, maybe at first it's nice. The character Cypher, he's like whining and dining, eating delicious steaks, and he's like happy with that, right? And of course, I think in the beginning it could be nice, but it's fake. It's not genuine. And you see what happens to Neo in that world over time, right? He becomes disillusioned. He becomes like, you know, troubled. And I think there's a reason for that because he knows that this is not like something is off, right? Um, and it's because he's not living a genuine life. So by taking the red pill, yes, you're exposed to all the bad stuff in the world, but you're also exposed to the good stuff. And bottom line is you are living a genuine life. And in the long term, that that blue pill life is not gonna pan out. That's how I see it.
I have to disagree with you again, Henry, for
Okay,
like what the
please
fourth time
go
this
ahead.
episode.
Go ahead.
I feel like I totally get what you're saying. I totally agree, but I feel like I would choose the blue pill and stay in the Matrix. Like I don't know. I'm just thinking about like, the world that we live in right now and it's so shitty and everything and it's a challenge to wake up every day and read something depressing in the news and everything. And it's a struggle every day. I feel like I would be totally fine being in the Matrix and living some kind of illusion, some kind of fake reality, just so I could find some happiness and comfort while I'm still on this earth. Um, I don't know if that sounds like a cop-out answer for not facing reality when it goes tough, but um, yeah, that's my choice. What about you, Christian?
Hmm. Like if I think of the specific world of the Matrix versus, the Matrix itself and the world outside the Matrix, where you think about well, if you do live in the outside world, you're going to be chased by these robots. You kind of see they kind of eat like that like really gross gruel. It's really everything's really dirty, and um like you kind of have to live in darkness, the sun's blotted out. So like that world does sound like it's um it sounds so hopelessly dystopian, even though of course at the end Neo saves the day. There's the big war. Neo sets him free. And so like there's also I think if you picked whatever option, you'd probably pick the grass is greener on the other side. Like, can you take the blue pill after fully knowing what the truth is if you've seen it? If you've already seen this world, like, okay, it's really terrible, I hate it, but that is kind of what's really going on here. Is that steak really going to taste that good, or will the memories of it haunt you? And are you always going to think, well, what would have happened if I took the red pill? Maybe I could see what really happens. Like that's Cypher's decision. Neo, of course, when he takes it, he has no idea what the red pill would be. And so there's there's also a part of me that would probably, if I was in Neo's position, let's say I'm not the one, of course, but I might take the blue pill because like if you see how deep the rabbit hole goes, it's the truth, but you're not really sure what you're going to expect. Would you still take it? If your life is pretty good now, you could know the truth about the world, but you're not really sure what that entails. Um, like, like I'd have almost a harder time taking the red. Whereas if you're there after knowing kind of what the real world is, and then you're given the pills again, like Cypher is, I don't know. I guess my answer kind of would flip flop between the two. I don't always know how to answer this one.
Well,
So,
just to chime in real quick, it seems like you do have the answer to would taking the red pill after knowing no, taking the blue pill after already knowing what's going on, like
mhm,
not work. Well, for Cypher, it does work, right? Because he knows what's going on. But yet he still takes the blue pill and he's like happy with it, right? So there's that.
mhm. But then there'd always be the curiosity of the red pill. I think also like i- it's about like a curiosity of what what
Yeah.
what the truth is. versus the the comfort of not
Right.
knowing.
And see, that's my argument. Like, I feel like anyone taking the blue pill will be like, they just have to know what is really going on. And it's that curiosity that will drive you and cause you to be not satisfied living that blue pill life.
Yeah, I guess um in the Neo question, I feel like that would also eat at you. Just because someone gives you the the choice, and then you pick that, I don't want to know. I'll take that and try to forget about this whole thing. You'll always wonder,
Yeah.
like, what was the truth? I'll never know.
Hmm.
I'll never know, and that will haunt me forever. But I'll be very comfortable. But I'll be
I'd be
very comfortable in the world. Live my
I'd be okay not knowing.
Yeah,
I'll make peace of it.
that is true too. It's almost like I'd pick red if I was Neo and blue if I was Cypher.
There you go.
Okay, let's move on to our next film, Black Panther. So the question I bring up is, was Killmonger the villain? Was he right? So Killmonger believes that Wakanda was selfish for not sharing their resources with other black people around the world while they were facing harassment, discrimination, hate from other um yeah, all that. So he has a lot of anger to Wakanda, T'Challa, and the royals in the room for not for just being selfish, he believes. So my question, yeah, is was Killmonger right? I want to start off because I just want to get off my chest that I feel like Killmonger was right. I feel like T'Challa was being selfish and not sharing his resources for other black folks around the world, like T'Challa says that he is king to Wakandans, but I feel like he I don't know. I feel like T'Challa as Black Panther has a responsibility to help other people, other black folks, and to not doing that's kind of like it's kind of like, turning the blind eye. You're okay with seeing other people being in pain, being uh having hate, and you're okay with that as long as you're comfortable, as long as your people are comfortable. So I think Killmonger was right in saying that like Wakanda should have opened their doors and helping other black folks around the world. Um, Henry?
Just another tough one here. Um, yeah, there's a lot to this question. Uh, I agree with a lot of what you said, Porfirio. Um, but we have to remember that in this film, Killmonger does go to extreme measures, right? He does use violence, he does kill. Um, and, maybe I'm being too idealistic, but I feel like violence is not the answer. To say outright we should never use violence is maybe going too far, but it should be really a last resort kind of thing. Um, and I do side more with T'Challa's viewpoint than Killmonger's viewpoint in this movie, where T'Challa was naive in a lot of ways, but ultimately he believed in people and he believed in uh, nonviolent solutions, right? So I would have to say, if I do have to give an absolute answer, yes or no, I would say no. Killmonger was not right. He's a super villain. With of course the caveat that I 100% understand why he did what he did, and I do support going to extreme measures when absolutely necessary. We go back to uh, what Malcolm X taught in his earlier days, by any means necessary, right? I do advocate a lot of that. But I think Our first steps, our initial solutions should be non-violent solutions. And generally speaking, violence is not the answer. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. What about you, Christian? Do you have something different?
Hmm. Like, 'cause in a way, I think both. I think T'Challa at the very end of the movie, T'Challa does make the right decision. He opens up Wakanda. He builds he starts building the like schools all around the world, and you see him in Oakland at the very end. Like, um, and I think Killmonger does have a very good point. Um, where you have Wakanda essentially keeping itself secret, holding mass untold riches and this secret society, while um all this tragedy kind of befell Africa and the countries and the people around them for generations upon generations, while their response essentially was to just hide, um and kind of keep the secret. And so I think Killmonger definitely does say a lot that's right. Um, but did he go too far at the end? Was he going too far at the end? And was Black Panther right to essentially kill him and take back the throne? I think so as well. So in a way, um, they're both wrong.
Okay, let me ask a quick follow-up question. Because, Henry, you said that you think Killmonger is right, except the way he executed it. It was too extreme, too violent for you.
Yeah, yeah, that's accurate, I would say.
So if he diplomatically got with T'Challa and was saying like, we have to, you have to open up Wakanda's doors and resources to other people, and T'Challa said no because he protects Wakanda people. What do you say then?
Well, then, I think he should keep trying at some sort of solution where you don't murder people, basically. You know what
Okay.
I'm saying? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, Porfirio, where it's like the only way T'Challa came to that realization of was Killmonger escalating and stealing the throne from him, and so putting saying, "No, this is a problem. You need to deal with this right now. I'm gonna make you think about this in a very extreme way."
Hmm.
In a way, is kind of what led to a better tomorrow.
Yeah.
To a better world for Wakanda. And the outreach. Whereas if he kind of had
Yeah.
outreach, but of course in the next movie they do get involved in a war with another country because of that. So it does also have its drawbacks as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to ask a kind of similar question for a different franchise, which is the X-Men franchise. Two big side points in this franchise are there's Professor Xavier and Magneto. You know, earlier Henry name dropped Malcolm X because, these two are based off two civil rights leaders, Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Professor X had an ideology that mutants and humans can coexist peacefully. Magneto, on the other hand, had that kind of idea, but he was like, "You hit me, I hit you back." His ways were a little bit more violent, you know. So I guess the same kind of question, like with Killmonger, who is right, Professor X or Magneto? And I will start off because I think both of you guys know my stance on this. I totally think Magneto's right. You know, um, I I think that's why I was like so a little bit like more like, with the last Killmonger question because I'm like, diplomacy can only get you so far unless you do action. And Professor X has a great ideology, but if humans cannot accept mutants for who they are without the harassment, then it's like there's only like a breaking point that like mutants can get to before they start being like, no, I'm not taking up with this bullshit anymore, and they have to stand up for themselves. Um, but yeah, that's my take. I think Magneto was right. Christian, what about you?
Hmm. Like, was Magneto right? Like, um, I think I would definitely say Professor X is right by trying to extend the olive branch of mutant kind to humans over Magneto because I think I guess with Magneto he's a much bigger character than Killmonger. So like so I think I have a little more to go off of like kind of just bad Magneto as a villain. Whereas um and so I feel like I see Killmonger's point like more than Magneto's point because you kind of see Magneto like act in much more villainous ways and like I think he rips out Wolverine's adamantium. He does like he pretty much EMPs the world
Hmm.
at one point, and so it's almost like even if he has the ideology you agree with, I think like he is such an evil character that you're like, well, I don't know, man. Uh, um, but I also think with the idea of mutants specifically, um, I think mutants kind of come with these powers. These powers that they can do things that the average human can't in very like kind of much more spectacular ways, like bending metal, reading minds, things like that. And so, I think if I was a human in the world of the X-Men and I had no powers and I wasn't a mutant, I do think that there would be a bit of a fear aspect of what they can do because you would see someone walking around, like I said, bending metal or this giant juggernaut figure crashing through walls that okay, that could happen to me at any point. Um and so like I almost see in a bit of a fear, even though I think the character, of course, you have Bolivar Trask, who kind of harnesses that fear and takes that way too far with the creation of the Sentinels. Um, so I much prefer, I think, Professor X kind of believing like, well, even though we can do these things, we are still people, just like regular people living our daily lives, and we're not these like freaks of nature. We're still just people.
I feel like you brought a little bit of like the conversation of the Sokoga courts about like mutants if they could be dangerous or not, if
Yeah,
gone unchecked.
it, yeah, it is similar.
Uh-huh. Okay, what about you, Henry?
Yeah, this is similar to the Killmonger question, and for that reason, I do have to stick with uh my answer that Magneto was not right here. Now,
Even though you did a whole tournament at WonderCon
I,
for to prove that Magneto was
I
right.
I did participate in a deep conversation supporting Magneto. That
But keep
said,
going.
yeah, that said, yeah, I do side with Professor X here. Again, this is a very tough question. And what you mentioned earlier, Porfirio, I agree with like a lot of that. And um, you know, it might be that Magneto is right. It might be that you're right, Porfirio. Um, and maybe this is me not allowing myself to believe that people are that bad. Like I I want to believe there is goodness in the world, and it's maybe overly optimistic, but I do feel like we can come to agreement. We can come to nonviolent solutions together, right? Um, because if I don't believe that, then the world becomes very bleak, So yeah, maybe there's an aspect of that I really just want to believe this. I want to believe that we can come together and make
You know,
things work.
I do see that from your answers that you've been giving, like back to the Sokovia Accords question, like you
Yeah,
believe that the Avengers will be good,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's why you're against the Sokovia
yeah,
Accords. So I could see that as
yeah,
a common, you're being consistent with your
yeah.
beliefs.
There's an optimism aspect, no question,
Hmm.
for sure. Am I putting too much faith in people, perhaps? But like I said, I almost can't allow myself to think otherwise. Last little tidbit. Um, we've been talking about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Later in his life, Malcolm X, his perspectives were more in line with Martin Luther King. So later in life, they were both more along the lines of nonviolent solutions. So just a little nugget there to
That
ponder.
that is true. I remember, yeah, Malcolm X traveled to what, Islam, and he saw that different people of different religions and races can coexist. So I
Right.
do remember that. Yeah.
Something to keep in mind.
Yeah. I'm just, I guess, a violent person. I've been having different answers than you guys.
It's okay.
Um, let's go on to, I guess, another question about I guess, yeah, like violence versus peace. And that leads us into the another franchise, Star Wars. And we all love Star Wars, and we know about the Jedi, and the Jedi have a code, and it goes something like, there is no emotion, there's peace. There is no ignorance, there's knowledge. There's no passion, there's serenity. There's no chaos, there's harmony. There is no death, there's the Force. And, basically, when you break that down, it means there's a lot of um, philosophies that the Jedi have of like detaching from emotions, detaching from personal items, which is why they can never have relationships. Do not lead into emotions such as anger or fear, because that leads to the dark side. So, do you believe in this code and philosophy that the Jedi have? Do you want to start off, Henry?
Yeah, sure. The Jedi Code. Ooh, good question. So when I think of the Jedi Code, I think of religion, you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
with religion, there are a lot of positive aspects to religion. The same way the Jedi are very positive in the Star Wars universe, right? The Jedi inspire, they bring people together. Religion historically has done the same. Religion has inspired people. It has brought brought together countless amounts of people. Where things go a bit wrong is when there is extremism with religion, right? Religious extremists. We hear the
Mm-hmm.
term all the time, right? And it's usually not a great connotation, right? So we had a bit of this conversation in our Revenge of the Sith episode we did recently. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna sort of echo what I mentioned there. When a Jedi or Sith goes too far with like going by the letter of the law,
Too much
being,
into beliefs.
oh my God, too rigid in their beliefs, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Things can go wrong. We saw this with, I mean, obviously Palpatine was very rigid in his thinking. There's one way to do everything. But even Yoda did the same kind of shit, really, right? Where Anakin went to him for some advice And he's like, no, no Padme, like no emotion, like you got to let go of all of that, right? No attachments.
Mm-hmm.
And where did that get him, right? Anakin went straight to the dark side, and we know what happened from there. So yeah, like there's a place for religion. There's a place for the Jedi's, the Jedi code, I think, but not in an extremist type of way, right? I gave the example of Luke Skywalker in that past episode where, yes, he's a Jedi, but he's got friends. He loves Han, he loves Leia, and he makes it work. He's got good balance, right? I think that's a good approach here. So I would say I support the Jedi's and the Jedi code as long as not an extreme interpretation of that Jedi code.
Okay. Christian, what about you?
Yeah, like I think what I read, like, there's no emotion, there's peace. Um and there's, I think, a wisdom that could be brought from, like, say, like your like like inward, the idea of, okay, I can make the right decision when I cast aside and kind of look beyond my initial emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I think about it, I kind of I I breathe them out. And there is something very monk-like and meditative about that idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea that, these negative emotions, anger and hatred, the speech of all those, that kind of one leads to the other, and that leads to the dark side. I think there is definite truth in what Yoda says, but I think on, on the flip side, going back to that Blade Runner conversation, the emotion is also what makes us human. The emotion is also, like, is what leads to relationships. It's what leads to love and being human. And so I think without that, it's almost like that is no life people would want to lead. Something completely devoid of that would be something that um wouldn't be worth living. Would that be a life worth living if you don't have any of those things, if you have to give those up? And so that is the true balance of the force, is the peace inside, as well as having the emotions as well. Um, and both of those dictate both of those can dictate your actions. And so it's easy to see why the Jedi also became this massive, you know, basically galactic police force, but lived and died by this creed
Mm-hmm.
that they had to cast this aside. And why, they eventually, why that led to their demise. You can see that with someone like Anakin, where he is not in a position where he can do that. He's not in a position where, after experiencing such great emotion, after suppressing it for so many years, he can go back to that stillness and
Yeah.
emotionless life,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd be willing to sacrifice everything for Padme. So I think the Jedi are wrong, even though there may be something right in the text.
All right, all right. The hot takes from Henry and Christian. So let's move on. And the next question I have, it comes from a lot of movies and real life situations. And so the question that I pose to both of you is, if we have the technology, should we do it? You know, I'm thinking of Jurassic Park. We had the technology to make dinosaurs. We did it, and look what happened. The Terminator, we had the technology to make AI, and look what happened. Even I guess like real life, if you look at like World War II, The US had the technology to make an atomic bomb, and look what's happened. We have the technology to even like kind of clone. We had that conversation about cloning earlier. So the question I have, yeah, for both of you is if we have the technology, should we do it? Christian, do you want to start this one off?
Hmm. Um. Yeah, it's like since you brought up the Terminator with AI, um, and I think AI is definitely the big topic right now of, should or should we do it? And I'm almost like, no, don't do it. Um, it's not safe, and there is the Pandora's box
Hmm.
that you're opening when you do something like that. And you can see like this cost, in the real world with AI right now of opening that Pandora's box. And so I think that's my first, I think, reaction. Of course, when you see that and you think, okay, well, should we make dinosaurs? Should we do this? Have these massive unchecked AI? Um, let's see. I can't think of another movie off the top of my head, but those are the big one. I'm thinking no, because it's too much of a Pandora's box.
It's too unpredictable.
Yeah, it's too unpredictable, and we're not really sure what the consequences will be.
Too many variables.
Yep. Um, of course, I think I guess the other thing is uh nothing ventured, nothing gained is kind of that idea.
Hmm.
Our inventions like that we think is if should we do that if we have the technology may have lead to other, say, like more positive things.
Hmm.
Um and so do the and so it could be hard to predict what leads to something terrible, um like Terminator, but what could end up leading to something, say something a world more like Star Trek.
Hmm.
Maybe this idea could lead us down that future path rather than that other future path.
I mean, Star Trek isn't that all that glam also.
Yeah. But more than
What about you, Henry?
Yeah, this is a very timely question, hot button question for sure. Is AI safe? Well, maybe this is the optimistic part of me
Ah.
speaking again, but I would say yes, with like some huge caveats, of course. Now, first off, I would say, what's the alternative, right? You try to prevent certain technologies from progressing, right? Um, there are dangers with a lot of different technologies, no question. But what happens when you try to stop it, right? If I could say like, okay, we're not doing AI, it's too dangerous, we're just stopping it. Like myself as an individual, even a group of individuals, I don't think we'll be able to stop the progression of technology. It can't be done. So if a government tries to stop it, if the world tries to stop something, it will find a way through, right? And maybe in a dangerous way where individual crazy people will like harness the power of AI and who knows what can happen, right? So I think that that's something to consider. If you try to stop technology, that's very tough. And when we're talking about a powerful technology that has potentially a wide range of uses and benefits and drawbacks. Um, you're talking about something that will be very hard to stop. So it's almost like the alternative is the justification for allowing it to happen, right? Um, instead of the government saying, "Okay, we got to stop this," you know, then all these like like dark internet shit will happen. Well, they will harness the power of AI, sort of thing, right? So that said, I think, as has happened historically, there can be responsible introductions to new technologies, right? Regulations and governing bodies. This is what we need to do, I think, because, yeah, the way I see it, there's no stop in technology. Nothing has stopped technology, right? It's just a matter of going about it gracefully and being careful about it and being responsible about it.
Okay, wait then. So I have a question for you then, Henry.
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe this is more like case by case kind of scenario. But I did bring up the example of like, Oppenheimer when they made the atomic bomb, and the US was kind of driven to make it because other countries were trying to also make it. But I mean, now we look at it now, and it's like nuclear power is such a dangerous thing, especially with
Yeah.
who's in the White House right now, you
Yeah.
know? So are you saying then, like at that time, if we didn't do it, someone else would have done it, so we had to defend ourselves to make it?
Yeah. That's a great point. And I think what you just brought up, the atomic bomb, is the ultimate counter argument to what I just said. It really is the ultimate counter argument, right? Um, but yeah, like, yes, to what you just said. If we, as the United States, decided, okay, we're just stopping it, um, that didn't stop other countries from
Hmm.
doing the same. Now, that is 100% not me saying what we did to Japan during World War II was right.
Yeah.
That is actually completely counter to what I'm saying. That is the irresponsible use of powerful technology, right?
It's
Yeah,
that's more attuned to what you were saying about like just modern like supervision
yeah,
of
yeah.
on technology.
Responsible use of new technologies. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, cool. Before we move on to the next one, I just want to say I don't really yet support like technology. I just feel like the smarter humans get, the more dangerous we get. But I would still be down for a Jurassic Park real life.
There
I
you
think that
go.
would be cool.
It is hard to deny the want to get in that bubble at Jurassic World and just like ride around with dinosaurs around, you know?
Right.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on. So I feel like this question we have talked about a few times, but this comes from the Daredevil franchise. Who was right, the Punisher or Daredevil? And so the Punisher, he believes in like just kill the enemy. Like don't give him a second chance, to go and take revenge or hurt other innocent people. Just get rid of the problem when you can. Daredevil has more of a moral code who's like, no, we don't hurt them, or we hurt them, but we don't kill them. We put them through the legal system and they put in jail, get time. So the a question that we've talked about a lot of times, even in the Daredevil podcast, who is right? Daredevil or Punisher? Henry, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is a good one. I love these characters. And I hate to keep going back to this like fiction versus nonfiction, but fictionally, yeah, I love the Punisher. I grew up on Punisher comic books, and I would always side with the Punisher in Marvel comics, and I continue to do so. But of course, that's in a fictional setting. In the real life, I do 100% support Daredevil and going about things in a legal way. Um, yeah, you know, uh, as much as I understand why the Punisher does what he does, I do not advocate grabbing some guns and taking things into your own hands, right? Killing criminals and just, you know, straight up murdering dudes. So I'm with Matt Murdock here.
Okay. For me, I know earlier in a lot of these questions I have talked about, yes, I'm in favor for violence, And I am, which is why I agree with Daredevil on take out the villain and let him go into jail. But I do draw the line when it comes to killing. That's why I don't think Thanos is right. And it's why I do not think the Punisher is right. Yeah, this I think just comes from I think just like Matt Murdock, I think comes from like the Catholic guilt. I don't believe in killing. So, is the legal system flawed? Yes, but I think yeah, killing's not the answer. No. Christian?
Oh, real quick, Porfirio, let me turn that around on you because
Okay.
on one hand, you are advocating violence
I have advocated for
when
violence all
when
episode.
necessary.
Uh-huh.
You brought up Killmonger and Magneto.
Yes.
Like okay, what about someone like the Punisher who in his mind he's doing the right thing when he's killing these criminals? Who's to say like Magneto can kill, but the Punisher cannot?
Well, I don't think Magneto can kill.
But he does kill.
Does he? I Christian,
Okay,
does
well,
he?
He does
Killmonger.
kill.
What?
Yeah,
Yeah. He,
he and Killmonger. They do kill. I mean, for quote unquote the greater good, right? But they do kill.
I mean, again, that's why I feel like I draw the line. Killing, I believe in the philosophy and everything. So, yes to violence, no to killing.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Christian?
um, yeah, I don't think the Punisher, is right. I think that's also, what makes him, the interesting. An interesting character because it is this like juxtaposition between every other hero. He is still a superhero and
Mm,
he's not a supervillain, but he has this moral code that frequently clashes with Daredevil, with Captain America, with Spider Man, where he just says, "Nope, I just got a bunch of guns and I'm just going to shoot him in the face." And it's just kind of these regular criminals. Um, and if they break the law, I'm killing them. That's that. And that is very hard line. I think like someone just being, judge, jury, executioner
hmm
on their own whims, that's very much um that's not good, that's not a good thing.
Christian, wait. Okay, I have to bring
Yeah.
something up now.
Oh yeah.
Because earlier, didn't you say that you were all for Batman being the yes to having the backup to taking care of the Justice League, you
That
know?
is true. Yeah. But I think like Batman holds the information and keeps the information for himself,
hmm
but he doesn't do anything with the information. He doesn't act on it. He doesn't like go out and use it or kill the Justice League or that. He just in case
Until the
I
moment
have them
comes.
until the moment comes where um but they find out before he uses them. Whereas I would say the Punisher, um and I think with Batman, of course Batman doesn't kill. And the Punisher on the other hand is also kind of not this super genius like Batman is. He's not this, and so I think he thinks much more narrowly than Batman,
Mm,
and he says, "Okay, you do the crime, I have to kill you."
okay. So
Um,
then, oh,
that's
go ahead.
oh, that's the thing. Whereas I think where you have someone like Batman who never aims to kill, he j- and feels a bit more trustworthy. Like I think Frank Castle is also like Frank Castle, the person, as of course you see, um, has a I think has a lot of mental struggles throughout his life, and of course he's faced with such trauma that but like I don't always think he's in the right headspace or his character is in you know the right headspace
True.
to be doing that. So I think for the Punisher to just like gun people down is much different than Daredevil, who's also very much not a man in the right headspace to go around beating people up.
Okay. Okay, so I have a quick question, one last quick question, Christian, because
Yes.
you brought up this question before of should Batman kill the Joker? And you did say right now like Batman is more has a better headspace than the Punisher. So should he or should he not kill the Joker?
He shouldn't kill the Joker. I think, because Batman has the code, as we say. We always
Okay.
draw the line at killing,
Okay.
as you guys have said, like, that's not right. And so, even though the Joker is this character who kind of gets out, like, you can't lock him up, he gets out of jail very easily all the time. He goes into Arkham because he kind of bleeds. He always has an insanity plea.
Mm-hmm.
So the court system isn't working. Um, the prisons can't hold him. And he's killed all these people, including one of the Robins. So is that the only way? But I think Batman is he sees that one, his villains are people that he can rehabilitate. There is always he wants to see hope for his villains.
Okay.
And he's a character that also like he thinks that the if he kills someone, then he is no better than the Joker. There's kind of that's the other kind of moral side of the coin. And that's also what the Joker knows that, and the Joker wants him to do that. So that's also why the two characters kind of make that yin yang, is that that's also kind of what the Joker wants. Joker
Mm-hmm.
wants Batman to break his one rule because that's the only way he's going to stop him. And so
Oh,
I would say no. I would say it's he shouldn't. One is that Gordon can just kill the Joker, and I think, of course, we all know the real reason. Going back to the Punisher, the real reason why Batman is killed Joker, I ask you, why hasn't the Punisher killed the Kingpin yet? Because the Punisher just can just, he doesn't give a fuck. He's gonna kill anyone he wants. Yet he hasn't killed the Kingpin.
well, he's tried.
Yeah, he's tried, but he never can. Um, Whereas, and of course, the real reason is because these are stories that are meant to go on forever, and so we can't kill the Joker, so we can bring him back later.
Yep.
Okay. Valid points. So let's move on to one of our almost final questions. And so this question was brought up by Henry. Henry, do you want to explain it?
Sure. The question is quite simply, do we have free will or is everything determined? So this is a pretty common pop culture question that comes up. Uh, the uh, the reference specifically was from the movie Minority Report, but like I said, we've seen this come up a lot. I think Star Wars addresses this. The Matrix addresses this as well. But yeah, what do you guys think? Do we have free will or not?
I feel like I'm going to say two contradicting things. I want to believe that we have free will where we can make our own decisions that are not like predetermined by like destiny or whatever. But when things do happen, I feel like stuff happens for a reason, like when I don't know. For me, like for example, like when I moved back home to Orange County, of course I was so disappointed and super sad, but I felt like it brought me like closer to my family and stuff. It helped me get reconnected with my roots back home. And then I ended up coming back here. I got the job from being down there and stuff, so I ended up coming back here. So I felt like that like everything happened for a reason, but I don't know. I feel like what I'm saying contradicts each other, my 2 points that I'm making.
Hmm. I'd say for me, as far as free will, I think that we do have free will. And that we always, we do always have free will. Nothing is truly determined. I think you could, I guess in the real world, argue that our decisions can also be influenced by people that aren't, of course, the people around us, maybe something you might see, you could see going on around you in the news or something, and that could inform certain decisions you might make that may not feel like it's of your own free will. And so, but I do think we always have free will. Nothing is, say, determined in the same way. Um, say, like, you would imagine you are the one, um, uh, like Anakin Skywalker. That he was always the one, and this was always going to happen, as fate has determined.
Yeah, but was he?
Um, it might not be.
Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, because in the Matrix, remember that Neo says that, or the Oracle tells Neo he is not the one.
Hmm.
Um, and so what makes him the one, of course, is that he decides to become the one for himself.
Well,
When you could argue that because uh, Morpheus also knows all the moves that Neo does, so does Trinity. Um, and that maybe there's something within him that he becomes the one of his own free will rather than something he is destined to be, rather than just a power that he always had within it.
didn't we learn in the fourth one that Trinity was actually the one?
I guess, I forget everything that
Yeah.
happened in the fourth
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. We don't talk about the
We
fourth
don't
one.
speak about that.
Sorry, Krish. I feel like I'm just bashing on your answer. Keep going. Keep going.
But, it's almost like, there's a role that is kind of thrust upon the character, and it's more about they use their free will determines how they live up to that. Um, I think like, actually, one thing that came to mind would, Harry Potter, something that also kind of deals with,
Mm,
destiny and the one
hmm
and all that.
hmm hmm
But I think it was in the second one where Dumbledore says, it's our choices that make us,
hmm hmm
where even though he is kind of thrust into this role, it's about how he chooses to, go about it, and how he chooses to be the hero is kind of what makes him the hero um rather than destiny.
Yeah. What about you, Henry? What's your answer to your question?
Well, I do think that the idea of destiny is a very sexy storytelling technique, the idea that Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one or Neo is the one. But, in the real world, I 100% believe in free will. I totally believe that the actions I take are meaningful, and life isn't like all set in stone. And it's kind of like what I was saying before about like I don't like the idea of like not believing in people. I don't like the idea of thinking that what I do is meaningless, right? There is meaning to the decisions I make, to the actions I do, all these sorts of things. And I think it's for real, like uh it's a bit of a fantasy to think of like this sort of predetermined thing. Like what you were saying, Porfirio, like you like the idea that there's a reason for things. I like that too, like, oh, there's something greater happening
Hmm.
here, right? I like that too, but again, it's just like it's just it's like it's a nice thought,
Hmm.
but I think the reality of it is like the decisions we make, the things we uh do have huge significance, and it's not like whatever we do, um this is going to happen regardless, right? That
Hmm.
it's actually kind of dangerous to think that way, right? It's almost like people not voting because like whatever, things are going to end up how they're going to end up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I not only do I believe in free will, I believe in the importance of free will also.
Amen to that.
Cool.
To that point. All right, you guys, we made it down to our final question.
All
Yay.
right.
And so this question was brought up by Christian, and the question is Martin Scorsese right about Marvel movies being more like roller coaster rides and not true cinema? That is the hot question of the evening, isn't it? So, Christian, since you brought up this question, do you want to answer it first?
Yeah. So, think this was presented as like this real hot take by Martin Scorsese. I forget how long ago he said this, but I think it's something that's always kind of stuck around in pop culture. Um, Part of me thinks that he wasn't talking about Marvel movies specifically. He was just kind of talking about blockbuster films in general. But I think it's because Marvel was he did it. He said it like right at the kind of the peak hype of Marvel, and so I think that in a way I think there is some kind of truth to what he said. Um, that there is this a bit of a roller coaster feeling with these. You could say with it doesn't have to essentially be Marvel. It could be many other movies that kind of follow a certain pattern of the idea of a big flashy blockbuster that has a lot of big set pieces. Uh, they're kind of meant to prioritize a bit of fun in the movie. It's where uh, they're really big, they're very explosive, you're having a lot of fun, you're moving really fast through a lot of action, similar to the way a roller coaster ride, how it starts by going up, it's building this tension, it's building, and then uh, there's this big just release after this big release and a lot of excitement and thrills, and it kind of prioritizes something say like that rather than something truly artistic. Um, And I think I think there is a bit of truth to what he says, and that um, they are like they are like roller coaster rides um, that prioritize being entertaining over being artistic. Um, I'm also gonna say that I don't. One is I don't think that's bad in any way. I don't think that makes it any lesser than the true art, and that um, having the entertaining values and having that wow factor is there is something to that, and there's something to that that one can be artistic, and two is I think that it doesn't need to say a million different things or pose a lot of different questions. Sometimes by having a little bit less of that, but having these little nuggets, um, there are questions that you can latch onto, kind of like we have here, with
Hmm.
the way we started with Avengers Infinity War, this massive roller coaster ride through different planets, through different characters, through different set pieces, awesome fights. You have all that, but you kind of have this little nugget that you kind of think about of like, oh well, yes, there's this philosophy here. Even though Thanos is this larger than life, this life villain, I think part of the fun of that ride is, like, finding those little nuggets and thinking about them later.
Okay,
So that's
okay.
my answer.
Henry, I feel like you did a podcast episode on this because you had thoughts.
We've definitely talked about this before, but it is a good question, and I think it's worth revisiting for sure. Are Marvel movies cinema? Question mark. Hell yeah. Fuck yeah. Of course they are. Come on. So I mean, I see where Scorsese is coming from. His thought is art needs to be not only entertaining, but also, culturally enriching and thought-provoking. And like Christian was alluding to, Marvel movies do tend to be more on the roller coaster end of things with entertainment. They're really geared towards entertaining audiences. That's like the main focus, right? But I think that Marvel movies are also, in addition to being wildly entertaining, they're also culturally enriching and thought-provoking. What have we been talking about for the past hour plus? All of these movies, a lot of Marvel movies included, are incredibly thought-provoking. We've had these deep conversations about things that have happened in Marvel movies. So to say that a movie like Captain America's Civil War is only entertainment is false. It's definitely thought-provoking. There's social commentary going on. There are things that you'll be thinking about for years to come, right? And in addition to all of that, I want to add that uh, this stance of being an arbiter of good taste is kind of bullshit also, right? To say, okay, these movies are cinema, these aren't. That's fucking bullshit. Come on. So
Gatekeeping.
yeah, it's gatekeeping culture. You nailed it there, Porfirio. You think about movies in history. There are certain genres that I love, right? Kung fu movies, blaxploitation, erotic thrillers. Are these movies also not cinema because they're like just for entertainment and they're exploitative? No, these are cinema also, right? So it's time to get off the high horse, yeah, and consider it all cinema.
I definitely, yeah, agree with both of you. Christian, I do see the points that you're making about like Marvel maybe not always being cinema. There are sometimes like blockbuster films, like I'm just thinking about like, Iron Man 2 or 3. Am I gonna come out of the theater with any like thought-provoking questions after watching it? Hell no. I'll just be like, it was a good movie with a lot of action. But there are some Marvel movies, even DC films that have thought-provoking themes and philosophies. Like next week, we're gonna go watch Superman, and Superman has a very deep theme of immigration. He's an alien that comes from a he's basically a refugee. He comes from a planet that's being destroyed, and he comes onto Earth. He learns Earth's cultures, and he still keeps his Kryptonian culture with him. He finds solitude on Earth. Like, sure, Black Superman can also be a blockbuster movie of him fighting bad guys, but it could definitely be thought-provoking about like what the themes that come with it and stuff. So the same can be said, yeah, for Marvel. We've been talking so many different Marvel projects in this episode. X-Men, Daredevil, Thanos, Killmonger, Black Panther. So um, I definitely do think that anything can be cinema, but it doesn't have to be cinema, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And so that comes to the conclusion of our episode. Any final sayings, you guys, before we give our farewell?
Oh, I got something. I think if you enjoy these kind of philosophical like debates on like heroes and all that, some of these questions I got, I dug up this book. We haven't done a book recommendation before, but a book that I actually really liked was called Batman and Philosophy:
Oh,
The
Mm.
Dark Night of the Soul. So it's a series of essays that tackle it's part of a pop culture series where blanket philosophy where they do tackle philosophical questions that are kind of brought up in texts like these.
mm,
And the one I was looking at, and that I got some ideas for some of the questions. is from this book. Why doesn't Batman kill the Joker? Is of course always the big one, and it
Hmm.
kind of has a few others where it looks at a Batman text, but then it uses a way to describe a philosophical concept that a philosopher has talked about before. So the editor is William Irwin and Mark White and Robert Arp. So I highly recommend Batman and Philosophy.
Great recommendation.
Yeah, nice recommendation. And my last quick take about should Batman kill the Joker? I don't think so. Like I was saying, I don't think I side with a Daredevil rather than a Punisher. So obviously, I don't think Batman should kill the Joker. Instead, I think they should get better locks at Arkham Asylum. Period.
You heard it first from Henry.
Stop letting these motherfuckers out of there, man. Come on.
And with that, farewell from Christian, Henry, and Porfirio.